Good morning. Good to see everybody here. Today we're going to be talking about the crucifixion of the corrupt nature. Now, salvation is a wonderful blessing. And if that were all we'd been given, it would still be more than we deserve. But God does not supply us with the bare minimum. He grants us the fullness of His mercy by giving us everything we need to become what He's called us to be. Sanctification is only a small portion of what Jesus' death purchased on the cross for us. Yet by it, we have access to a fuller understanding and ability to do those things that God has prepared for us to do. Not simply the understanding, but the understanding and the ability. Romans 6, 1 and 2. What shall we then say then? Shall we continue in sin that grace may abound? God forbid. How shall we that are dead to sin live any longer therein? And just as physical death separates us from the ability to get up and do the things we used to do, so the death of the old man, as Paul puts it, removes our ability to sin. Now, the old man is not a separate person who lives inside of us. It's not the devil who's going to continue to tempt us, but it's a description of who we were before we came to a saving knowledge of Jesus and the cleansing power of sanctification. The old man is our past self, as opposed to the new creatures we become in Christ. The distinction between physical death and the spiritual death of our old sin nature lies in the fact that as living humans, we retain the ability to choose for ourselves. The Bible makes it clear that we can put off Christ as readily as we can put Him on, if we so choose. Romans 13, 14, but put ye on the Lord Jesus Christ, and make not provision for the flesh to fulfill the lust thereof. Also Romans 6, 12, 13, and 16, let not sin therefore reign in your mortal body, that ye should obey it in the lust thereof. Neither yield ye your members as instruments of unrighteousness unto sin, but yield yourselves unto God as those that are alive from the dead, and your members as instruments of righteousness unto God. Verse 16, know ye not that to whom ye yield yourselves servants to obey, His servants ye are, to whom ye obey, whether of sin unto death, or of obedience unto righteousness. The phrases, make not provision for the flesh, and neither yield ye your members as instruments of unrighteousness, both reveal that we retain that choice of what we're going to do throughout our lives. Sanctification does not remove our free will. Jesus even describes this situation and the danger it poses to those who become unwary of the enemy's influence. In Matthew 12, 43 through 45, we read, when the unclean spirit is gone out of a man, he walketh through dry places, seeking rest, and findeth none. Then he saith, I will return into my house from whence I came out. And when he is come, he findeth it empty, swept, and garnished. Then goeth he and taketh with himself 7 other spirits, more wicked than himself, and they enter in and dwell there. And the last state of that man is worse than the first. Even so shall it be also unto this wicked generation. Jesus describes this person as empty, swept, and garnished. What is this but sanctification? The state of sanctification and the preparation of an individual who is ready for the indwelling of the Holy Spirit. His soul was pure, being cleansed from everything that had previously polluted it. Yet as Paul said, he had yielded his members as instruments of unrighteousness unto sin. Sanctification is not the complete eradication of the ability to sin, but the strengthening power of the blood of Christ against the temptation and influence of the enemy. As long as we are breathing, we remain human, and we retain the ability to choose that which has no eternal benefit. While we stand firm beneath the cleansing flow of the blood of Christ, we will be safe. No power of hell has the ability to remove us, to drag us out from the precious blood of Jesus. Romans 8:38 and 39. For I am persuaded that neither death, nor life, nor angels, nor principalities, nor powers, nor things present, nor things to come, nor height, nor depth, nor any other creature shall be able to separate us from the love of God, which is in Christ Jesus our Lord. But when we walk away from that cleansing stream, we do so of our own accord and place ourselves on dangerous ground by separating ourselves from the protection of God. 1 Timothy 1:19, holding faith and a good conscience, which some, having put away concerning faith, have made shipwreck. Hebrews 3:12 and 14. Take heed, brethren, lest there be in any of you an evil heart of unbelief in departing from the living God. For we are made partakers of Christ, if we hold the beginning of our confidence steadfast unto the end. It's not God's will, nor is it His failure or any weakness on His part if we separate ourselves from the love of God, if we don't continue steadfast. This is humanity, seeing the truth, yet choosing something less for themselves. And even this is not an instant death sentence. But the sooner we recognize what we've done and cry out to God for help, the safer it will be for us and for our eternal souls. God is on our side and reaching out to lift us up whenever we find ourselves in need. The commentary this morning: in justification, the sinner is saved. His sins are forgiven and he is freed from guilt. Justification is by faith on man's part and by the blood on Christ's part, according to Romans 5:1. With the accompanying regeneration and reconciliation, the believer remains in the justified state as long as he is willingly obedient. His personal past sins are forgiven, but the sinful fleshly nature inherited from Adam's fall remains. This nature will strive to assert itself at every opportunity. Paul says, "For they that are after the flesh do mind the things of the flesh." The carnal, that is to say, the fleshly mind, is enmity against God. Once again, that's open hostility, remember, from a couple lessons ago. So then they that are in the flesh cannot please God. Romans 8:5, 7, and 8. Now, willing obedience is the hallmark of Christianity at every stage of development. There will never come a time in this life when we are compelled to do God's will against our own will. Not by God, anyway. There will never come a time, once again, in this life when we are compelled to do God's will against our own will. The option to do what we will choose is always our own. Whatever we choose, that's what we do. That's our own choice. That's our option. That's our prerogative as human beings, as long as we live, regardless of where we may find ourselves. God is not seeking out robots who have no power to resist His will. He wants us to come to Him freely, of our own accord. And then it's His desire for us to remain with Him by that same continual choice. I believe Paul said, "I die daily." Throughout our lives, He showers us with good things. James 1:17, "Every good gift and every perfect gift is from above, and cometh down from the Father of lights, with whom is no variableness, neither shadow of turning." Now, when the Israelites had turned from God and worshiped the gods of the surrounding nations, we read of His response in Hosea 2:6-8. "Therefore, behold, I will hedge up thy way with thorns, and make a wall that ye shall not find her paths. And she shall follow after her lovers, but she shall not overtake them. And she shall seek them, but shall not find them. Then shall she say, I will go and return to my first husband, for then was it better with me than now. For she did not know that I gave her corn and wine and oil, and multiplied her silver and gold, which they prepared for Baal. God's people had forgotten that they had received every good gift from Him. So when they turned to their idol gods, He allowed their suffering in order to help remind them both of their failures and of His continual faithfulness. Their struggles were not for their destruction, but for their good, to draw them back to Himself and all the good that they would receive from Him after their return. Hosea 12:14 and 15. Therefore, behold, I will allure her and bring her back and bring her into the wilderness and speak comfortably unto her. And I will give her her vineyards from thence, and the valley of Achor for a door of hope. And she shall sing there, as in the days of her youth, and as in the days when she came up out of the land of Egypt. Verse 15 contains one of the most beautiful analogies in all of Scripture. God said, I will give her the valley of Achor for a door of hope. The word Achor means trouble. Achan, the troubler of Israel. When we return to the Lord after being drawn away, it is often the difficulties we face while apart from Him that remind us of the goodness of God. Now, while we rarely enjoy the difficulties we face, we can look back on them and rejoice in the knowledge that God allowed us to face them for the express purpose of drawing us back to His loving embrace. Many say, how could a loving God allow such suffering? I say, it's that very suffering which helps us to understand our need for Him and His ability to take us safely through every storm this life and the enemy of our souls can throw at us. God won't calm every storm we face, but as long as we trust Him, He will take us through every single one of them for His glory and our benefit. Back in the commentary, this corrupt nature is subtle, and at times it will prevail. When this happens, the man or woman who is sincere will feel convicted and repent and will flee to the Savior in confession and godly sorrow and will be forgiven. Some have lived a lifetime in this manner, unaware that a better way has been provided. That better way is the subject of this lesson, sanctification, the second definite work of grace. The golden truth, Galatians 2:20, I am crucified with Christ. Nevertheless I live. Yet not I, but Christ liveth in me. And the life which I now live in the flesh, I live by the faith of the Son of God who loved me and gave Himself for me. Now, when we allow God to crucify our flesh through sanctification, those who surround us each day will see Jesus living through our every word and action. As I said, an apple tree doesn't have to strive to produce apples. It happens because it's an apple tree. Now, this doesn't make us perfect. If you think about it, if you've ever seen a fruit tree, you've probably seen some bad fruit on a fruit tree. But once in a while, even a good tree will produce a bad apple, a bad lemon, whatever. But this does not grant us the right. This does not make us perfect, and it doesn't grant us the right to lift ourselves up above others. This is not an opportunity to condemn the lost, but to show them the same love that Jesus showed the sinful masses in His own day. That's what Paul was saying when he wrote, Christ liveth in me. The same attitude, that same love and concern for the lost, that same compassion on those who are ignorant of God's will, and that same anger toward those who should have known better will be seen in us when we allow Jesus to live through us. Surrender to God is an act of defiance against the flesh and our common adversary. They won't take it lightly. They will fight against us and do their best to persuade us to return and submit ourselves to their control. And it's our responsibility to remain steadfast in our desire to continue under our subjection to the one who has our best interests at heart. We do so by remembering the great sacrifice and the great debt we owe on His behalf. Jesus died so that we could live. All He asks in return is that we allow Him to live through us. When we do, both we and those around us will not be able to keep from being blessed. Any thoughts, comments on this introduction section of this lesson this morning?
Why is sanctification so hard to get?
It's not.
That's not the answer.
But it's not. I mean, it's everything is us. If there's a hindrance, it's within us, and we have to find it. We have to seek the Lord and find what it is that's hindering us. And I agree, it is difficult, but it's difficult because we're human, and we tend to overlook our own failures. We have a tendency to be more harshly criticize those that we see around us than ourselves. And as a result, we often overlook those things that are coming between us and receiving what we need. And I mean, I'm right there with you. I understand. I do understand what you're saying. But at the same time, I've been there and I've received it. And I also understand that once you come to that place, it's simple. The hard part is accepting what God would have you to accept about yourself. And once you find that, then, as someone once said to me, it's as easy as falling off a log. We just have to be persistent, because everything that we do, the enemy is going to do his best to cause us to avoid finding God's will. He's going to distract us. He's going to help us. He's going to cause us to overlook things. He's going to cause us to say, no, that can't be it. That's not it. It's got to be something else. And I'm not pointing at anything in anybody's life because I don't know. I wish I could. I wish I could see into other people's souls and say, okay, well, if you take care of this, you would have no more problems. But I can't. I can't even see that for myself most times. If once again, that fruit tree, because it's a fruit tree, it has no knowledge of that rotten apple that it has. Because it's a tree. It doesn't understand. All it does is produce fruit.
But I have knowledge of these rotten apples, and I keep making them.
Then you have to surrender them to God. You have
do that.
you stop. By faith, do you remember? I don't remember which Indiana Jones it was, but there was. I've done it. Jana's smiling over there. I don't remember which one it was, but I think it's the Holy Grail. He's trying to find the Holy Grail. And he comes to a place, he's right there at the verge of finding it, and there's a huge chasm in front of him. And he says, I don't remember the line in the movie precisely. It's been years since I saw it. But basically what it is, how do I get across this? There's no rope. There's nothing for him to catch his whip on and swing across or anything. He can't make it. And something in the movie talks about faith, taking a leap of faith. So he sees this chasm, it's directly in front of him. And it's the funniest thing watching, because I see him in my mind. He puts his foot up over the empty space, and it's solid ground. And he's looking down, and all he can see is a hole, and he's walking over what looks like nothing. It was an optical illusion that made it look like there was an empty pit, but there was a pathway across it that he couldn't see because of his perspective. When we take that first step, God takes over. But it's required that we take that first step. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to allow this to control me. Lord, I need your help. And when we do that, He will take over. The hard part is taking that first step, because it looks like we're going to fall to our destruction. It looks like it's impossible.
I think my biggest confusion is that we have to give it to Him, but it's all our choice.
That's exactly right.
That's what I don't understand. How can it be both?
It-
How do you give it all to Him, but you keep it all?
you don't keep it.
But it's all by.
It's by faith.
Yeah, that's just,
I'm sorry, I can't explain it. I wish I could explain it better. If anybody else has better words for, please.
Es interesante lo que el hermano expresa.
It's interesting what our brother is expressing.
Hay muchas cosas que no las entendemos,
There's a lot of things that we don't understand.
pero a través de la entrega para con Dios,
But as we give ourselves, or as it comes with giving ourselves over to God,
Él nos ayuda a entender.
He helps us to even understand.
Me recuerdo cuando yo fui recién salvo,
I remember when I was first saved,
escuchaba los mensajes de la fe,
I would hear messages about faith
mensajes relacionados con Abraham
and messages about Abraham
y con varios personajes de la Biblia.
and various people in the Bible.
Y yo veía, bueno, cuando escuchaba, decía, ¿cómo yo puedo ser un hombre de fe?
And I asked, how can I be a man of faith?
Pero a medida iba orando
But as I prayed, as I continued to
y
pray
escudriñando la palabra,
and searching the scriptures,
Dios me iba ayudando
God was helping me at the same
a
time
entender esto.
to understand.
Entonces, en conclusión, necesitamos poner en las manos de Dios todo esto
And so in conclusion, we have to put all of this in the hands of the Lord
para que Él nos dé entendimiento
so that He gives us understanding
y que nos ayude el Espíritu Santo
and that the Holy Ghost help us
para que no haya esa inquietud
so that there's not that that thing that's unclear
en nosotros.
in us.
Porque Dios no es un Dios de confusión.
Because God is not a God of confusion.
A veces el enemigo se interpone
Sometimes the enemy will intercept.
y claro está de que siempre se va a oponer.
And of course, he's always going to oppose us.
Pero hay que siempre poner esto en las manos de Dios.
And we always have to constantly put it in the hands of the Lord.
Hay cosas que yo no entiendo,
There are things I don't understand,
pero yo necesito que Dios me dé la revelación
but I need God to give me the revelation
para poder seguir en su voluntad.
so I can keep going in His will.
Y la otra parte que quería compartir con respecto a lo que es el comentario,
And
a la introducción,
The other part I wanted to share with respect to the introduction,
lo que es interesante lo que dice el apóstol Pablo,
it's interesting what the Apostle Paul says,
porque los que viven conforme a la carne
because they that live after the flesh
se ocupan, ¿verdad? de las cosas de que son carnales.
they walk after the things that are of the flesh.
Y me llama la atención siempre esta parte cuando él habla.
And I always notice that whenever I read this,
Y siempre me preguntaba, ¿estará hablando de la gente del mundo
and I always wonder, is he talking about people in the world,
o está hablando de los hermanos?
or is he talking about the brothers and sisters?
Y son temas a veces que no difíciles de entenderlos,
And sometimes there are things that are a little bit difficult to understand,
pero yo creo que él estaba hablando de almas que se decían conocer a Dios.
and I believe that he was talking about souls that claim to know the Lord,
¿Por qué? Porque estaban ocasionando resistencia,
because they were causing resistance
problemas,
and problems.
y en esa parte comparto esto porque he escuchado muchos comentarios
And I share this because I've heard it said
de que de gente inconversa
about, from unbelievers
que a veces critican
that I've heard their criticism
al cristiano.
toward the Christians.
Y bueno, conmigo se han acercado
And there's been some that have approached me
y me dice, ¿por qué tú eres así y por qué el otro no es así?
and they've asked, why are you this way, but the other guy is not?
Pero en una ocasión le pregunto a alguien, ¿por qué me dices eso?
But I asked him, why did you ask me that question?
¿O por qué la pregunta?
Or why are you asking?
Es porque él actúa como mundano.
That's because he acts like somebody from the world.
Y escuchar esos comentarios
And to hear those remarks
sí duele nuestro corazón,
It's hurtful, it hurts our hearts.
porque el mundo espera
Because the world is waiting
que
for
como cristianos seamos un ejemplo.
that as Christians we are examples.
Pero tristemente no lo es.
But sadly, that's not how it is.
Ahora hay que saber dar una respuesta a
But
ellos.
of course, we have to know how to give them an answer.
Porque muchos dicen, no, yo para ser como él, mejor no voy a la iglesia.
Because many will say, well, if I'm going to be like him, I'm not going to church.
Y ahí es donde necesitamos que Dios nos ayude
And that's where we need God to help us.
para poderlos a ellos darles una palabra, ¿verdad? Para que comprendan.
So that we can share a word with them that would be helpful to their understanding.
Mucha gente se ha alejado,
And there's a lot of people that have departed,
mucha gente,
a lot of people,
porque ha puesto la mirada en el hombre.
because they've placed their eyes on man.
Mhm.
Pero con el dolor en mi corazón,
But with pain in my heart,
yo creo que el Señor me ha ayudado en todos los momentos
I think that the Lord has helped me
a hacerles saber
to help them to understand, to
de
know
que el que lo ha salvado,
that the one that
el
saves
que lo llamó,
and the one that
de
calls,
igual manera me salvó y me llamó a mí,
and the same one who saved and called me
es Cristo.
is Jesus Christ.
Entonces no debemos de apartar la mirada de él.
So we can't take our eyes off of him.
Pero a veces es muy difícil.
But sometimes it is really hard.
Pero Dios nos ayuda.
But God help us. May God help us.
So one thing just came to my mind as you were speaking, an analogy that God's given me on many occasions is if you have a problem with smoking, you have to make your way to the store where you buy those cigarettes if you're going to smoke. If you have a problem with alcohol, you have to avoid those places, bars, liquor stores, that would cause you to fall into those temptations. And there's no difference with anything in our lives. There are things, if you've got a problem with lust, some television shows are not a good thing for you to be watching. If you've got a problem in your life with anything that the enemy is putting in your path and causing you temptation, it's our responsibility to recognize that and avoid it. And when we do, God gives us the strength to do so. It's our choice. If I have a problem with smoking, it's my choice to go down to the store and put down my money. If I have a problem with lust, it's my choice to pull up some pornography on the internet. That's my choice. I have to go do it. There are things that the enemy will place in front of us that weren't expected, but it's still our responsibility to look away. We just like Peter, walking on the water, he had a choice. He could keep his eyes on the Lord, or he could recognize the storm that was raging around him. He chose to recognize the storm, and the moment he did, he began to sink. But when he did, God was right there. Jesus was right there at his side. Jesus didn't turn his back on him and say, well, you looked away from me. You're sunk. That's it. I give up on you. Jesus was right there by his side and pulled him back up. He couldn't do it. He couldn't walk on the water without Jesus, but Jesus was there. And because he immediately turned to God, he immediately turned to Jesus, he was lifted up out of that temptation, so to speak, to look at the things around him.
The Bible says, the Bible specifically says in one of the Gospels, and he beginning to sink.
Right.
I love that.
Beginning to sink.
Because that gives a good perspective of exactly how quick Peter was when he realized what was taking place, how quickly he
Absolutely.
turned to the Lord, and then how quickly Jesus
Right.
responded.
Was
I mean,
on the scene.
We don't have the benefit of knowing how long things happened.
How quickly he sunk?
Right, but we do know that it was immediate. It was
Yeah.
like as soon as Peter realized he was sinking, he called out to Jesus, and as soon as Peter called out to Jesus, Jesus lifted up out of his heart.
Right.
And then they went back to the boat, walking on the water
Together, yeah.
together
Yep.
in the storm,
In the storm.
because the storm hadn't stopped yet.
Right. That's right. And that's something that we need to understand. Just because Jesus is there to lift us up doesn't mean the storm is over.
Right, but he's there.
But he's there, and that is one of the most wonderful things in the world to know that even if the storm is getting worse, He's right there. Even if you don't feel Him, even if you don't recognize His presence, He's there. And I praise the Lord for Sunday school because it helps me to know that Jesus is there in the midst of my storms. Not because I'm perfect, because I know I'm not. Everybody knows I'm not. But because when I sit down and look at these lessons, God gives me what I need to say. And I know it has to be Him because it's not in me. It's not in me.
Brother Kryss, just to, I guess, respond a little bit more to what Brother Nick was saying there. I know one thing that I've encountered in ministering different things, one of the, I guess, more confusing aspects to people of sanctification is we talk about sanctification being an instantaneous work.
Mm-hmm.
And while sanctification is completely an instantaneous work, go back to what Paul said is, I die daily. Right. Even though that sanctification comes and it works instantly, day by day, we have to make that choice. You know, if sanctification would prevent us from ever sinning again, why would anybody backslide?
Right, exactly.
There's been so many people, you know, that we've seen along the way that were once sanctified that have turned their back on the Lord. And if sanctification wasn't something that we had to continually make that decision to stay in and walk in and have those actions, you know, as you were saying there, the key of it is we've got to lay it down and we can't pick it back up. Right. I was thinking the other day as someone was praying here and it seemed like the Lord really began to move. The Lord just kind of impressed on me a thought of, you know, as the tears fall and they soaked into those chairs, if it needs to be, let's take the chair out and throw it in the garbage can. Let's get rid of it. We don't need to leave it around for us to pick it back up again. Right. But the reality of it is, at any point in time, we can go back. Right. And we can pick those things back up. And, absolutely. And just because that is the reality doesn't mean that we're not sanctified, but it means that we have to make that choice to continue on walking in that sanctification.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think, Lord willing, we'll be able to cover some of that. Maybe. I appreciate all the input. It's been great. And I do have quite a bit of information here that I think there's a lot more to this than just what we've covered so far. I'm going to skip ahead, just give my own commentary here, just a little bit what God has given me. Just read one verse here at the end of this paragraph. For since by man came death, by man came also the resurrection of the dead. For as in Adam all die, even so in Christ all shall be made alive, shall all be made alive. In the beginning there was a garden. The two who lived there represented all of humanity. The man had two purposes at that point. Humanity had two purposes. The man had two purposes at that point. He was to obey God and to protect His bride. Such a simple job and such a long-lasting impact on humanity. Many would try to blame them or say, I would never have done that. Of course, that's easy for us to say because we can look back and see the outcome. But they didn't know the lasting effects of their disobedience. Whenever we fail, we are no different. How many times have you said or done something that you wish you could unsay or undo? None of us would have behaved any differently than them. Adam failed to protect his bride, and they both suffered the consequences. We read in Genesis 3:6, She took of the fruit thereof and did eat, and gave also unto her husband with her, and he did eat. He was right there, and he did not stop her from doing what he knew to be wrong. Many years later, there was another garden. The first garden, Eden, had been a paradise. The second garden, Gethsemane, was a place of intense pressure and trial. There, at that second garden, Jesus stood between the enemy and His new bride. Where the first Adam had failed to protect his bride, Jesus, the second Adam, firmly stood his ground. He died as a result of his unwillingness for his bride to be deceived. He purchased our redemption by His sacrifice. This was the plan God had prepared in eternity before time began. It was His intention to make a way where humanity always fails. Jesus did what no human before or since has or ever could do. He resisted the enemy, and it cost Him His life. He succeeded where Adam had failed. And by His sacrifice, we have the hope of eternal life. Adam failed, and by his failure, brought forth death to all humanity. Jesus succeeded and offers life to all who will accept it. Let's skip ahead again. The power of the grace of God and the gift by grace had abounded. That is, Christ's deliverance is infinitely greater than the power of Adam's offense. Giving in to temptation is easy. It doesn't take any skill or power. It's almost as effortless as breathing. As humans, it's a normal part of our personal makeup. Failure is always an option. But submission goes against everything this flesh knows. It is contrary to everything we think. One can easily fall into sin, but nobody has accidentally fallen into righteousness. Adam's failure was the expected outcome of flawed humanity. But when Jesus overcame every obstacle to purchase our salvation, He cleared a path that no one else ever had. Philippians 2, 5 through 8. Let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus, who being in the form of God, thought it not robbery to be equal with God, but made Himself of no reputation, and took upon Him the form of a servant, and was made in likeness of men. And being found in fashion as a man, He humbled Himself and became obedient unto death, even the death of the cross. Prior to the advent of Christ, any such action on the part of humanity was absolutely impossible. But since He was willing to experience and do all that He did for our sakes, we now have the assurance of Philippians 2:13. For it is God which worketh in you, both to will and to do of His good pleasure. This is the power and beauty of the blessing of sanctification. The price was great, but God's love for us was greater still. Skipping on next, we might extend this. How shall we that are dead to sin live any longer therein? We might extend this question to the sinful nature, since he goes on to deal with the crucifixion of the old man, or the corrupt sinful nature. Just to be clear here, the corrupt sinful nature is who we were before sanctification. The old man is not Satan, it's us. It's part of us. It is the part of us that finds it necessary to continue in sin, as Paul describes in chapter 7 of Romans. Verse 19, for the good that I would, I do not, but the evil which I would not, that I do. It's the part of us that we inherited from Adam. And it's not God's will for it to remain, that particular aspect of humanity to remain in His children. As a result, He provided a way to be free from that part of ourselves. This doesn't remove the ability to sin, but only the desire. Often when individuals fall away, it's because the devil has deceived them into believing that their actions are acceptable or justified. This is what he did in the beginning, and he continues to do today. The sin nature was not present with Adam and Eve in the beginning. There was no inbuilt desire to sin within Adam and Eve. It was only deception that brought about the fall. Now that we know the subtle tactics of the enemy, we should be strengthened against deception. Yet although the sin nature has been destroyed, our human nature remains susceptible to the deceit of the enemy, just as Adam and Eve. This is why it's possible to fall away even after being sanctified. What did Jesus say that I read earlier? Matthew 12:43 through 44. When the unclean spirit is gone out of a man, he walketh through dry places, seeking rest, and findeth none. Then he saith, I will return unto my house from whence he came out, and when he is come, he findeth it empty, swept, and garnished. Swept and garnished. That is to say, prepared for the reception of the Holy Spirit, or sanctified. Jesus supports the possibility of falling away even from the sanctified state. Verse 6 says that the crucifixion is done in order that the body of sin might be destroyed, as in done away with, removed, killed. Yet if souls who are dead to Christ can be resurrected to live with Him, then is it really any wonder that they can die again? Consider Lazarus, the brother of Mary and Martha. He died, yet he was resurrected by the words of Jesus. Did he live forever after that? Was that the end of his death? It's appointed man wants to die and then the judgment. Did he just continue on? Is he still walking the streets of Jerusalem today? His final death is not recorded in the Bible, but we can be sure that it happened. That's not to say that falling away after sanctification is inevitable, only that it's possible. Just as a dead physical body ceases to commit sins, likewise a sanctified heart ceases to sin because the sin nature is dead. Romans 6, 1 and 2 and verse 7 also. What shall we say then? Shall we continue in sin that grace may abound? God forbid. How shall we that are dead to sin live any longer therein? Verse 7, for he that is dead is freed from sin. Good or bad, friend or enemy, those who are dead will not sin. And if we are alive to Christ, it's only as a result of the death of the sin nature in us. This does not bring about a prideful attitude. That would be sin. Oh, I'm so glad I don't sin anymore. I'm not like these other people. Sounds like the Pharisee. Jesus spoke of the Pharisee and the publican praying. Sanctification will not cause us to look down on the lost. This is never the behavior of Jesus in Scripture. The death of the third nature will increase both our humility and our compassion. If any feelings of anger rise up in the sanctified heart, it will be as a result of those who claim to hold the fullness of the truth, yet refuse to live up to the words that they speak. John the Baptist and Jesus called the Pharisees a generation of vipers who would be hard-pressed to escape eternal destruction. Paul, Jude, Peter, and James all warned those who thought themselves to be very religious to beware of their own coming destruction if they didn't get things right. Sanctification brings a holy indignation against those who use the Word of God improperly, but compassion and concern for the lost. This is how Jesus behaved, and we are to be like Him. Just a couple more things here. Try to squeeze them in. As I said earlier, the choice remains ours. It's our own choice. What will we do with the gifts we've been given? We can cherish them or we can abuse them. I remember when I got my first car, I treated it quite poorly. I was hard on the transmission and I destroyed the tires. But when I had to purchase my first set of new tires, I realized the importance of good stewardship. I've not had any problems like that with my vehicle since. How much more precious are the gifts we receive from God? They're to be cherished and cared for so that they will thrive and be a blessing, not only to ourselves, but to all those who surround us. How will we treat these incomparable gifts? The choice is ours. Sanctification only removes those things that we know are a hindrance. Sometimes God will reveal that our actions, although not sinful, could allow the enemy to use them to draw us away from His protection. We must be willing to set them aside for our soul's sakes. Other times, the Spirit may show us something that we've not seen before that needs to be dealt with so that we can grow spiritually. This is not an exhaustive list of possibilities. Perhaps you have other ideas for potential examples. There are so many things that the enemy would use to try to destroy us. Sin cannot dominate the sanctified life, for we who are under grace are no longer under the law which gave sin its power. Not everything that we read in God's Word is so clearly cut and dry. As a matter of fact, a lot of it that we read isn't clear as far as how we are to obtain it. But that's part of the walk of faith. It's growing in our understanding. You can't expect any of those kids in the classroom, Sunday school classroom back here, to understand physics today. You could explain it to them. You could go into great detail and make them sit and make sure that they stay awake and shove it down their throats for weeks. They're not going to get it unless they have that firm foundation of mathematics and all the things that build up to that. The intricacies of physics will never be anything that they will be able to fully comprehend. And so it is with us. It is our responsibility to begin the journey and then continue on it, to continue to look to God. I wish that I had all the answers for myself. It would make my life a lot easier. But I don't. And looking around here, I'm pretty sure that even Brother Ard, you don't have all the answers, do you? You don't know everything. I wish you did. You come up here and you teach us. You could fill us up with your knowledge of everything. But if Brother Ard doesn't know the fullness, bishop in the church, good man, good pastor, if he doesn't know everything, where does that leave the rest of us? I believe he's over 80. I don't think any of the rest of it, well, you're not close to that, I don't think. You may be heading that direction, but you're not as old as he is. None of us have the fullness of the truth. And we're not asked to have the fullness of the truth. All we need is what God has for us, what God intends for us to receive. What God has given me is very likely different than what He's given you. Now, I'm not talking about it's wrong for me to do this, but it's not wrong for you to do that. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about different aspects of the Word of God that He has given to each one of us. And why? Because we need each other. Just as we need Him, we need each other. That's why we're called a body. That's why we're described as a building, because a building needs each stone to make it a complete building. A body needs each part to make it a complete body. And the hand can't do the work of the foot. You can try. You're going to do a poor job. The foot certainly can't do the work of the hand. Although I've seen some people who are paraplegics who did some amazing things with their feet. But God wants us to be a body. He wants us to share what He's given us as individuals with one another, so that He can use us to build each other up. Not to press each other down, but to build each other up. Whatever my weakness is, I expect you guys are strong in those areas. Someone among you is strong, and I need your support in my areas of weakness. Whatever your weakness is, you need the rest of us to help you in those areas of weakness. And by working together and allowing the blessings of God to work through us, we will lift one another up. Not in pride, but in proximity to God, in a closeness, our spiritual closeness to God. Not so that we can look down on those outside the four walls, not so that we can say how perfect we are, but so God can use us to be a light, to draw souls to the truth. That's everything in the Bible points to that. That's our purpose here. Every lesson that we have in Sunday school, every message that we hear preached, every song that we sing, they all are intended to bring us together to the point where we can be a benefit one to another and allow the light of this local congregation to shine into the darkness of the world so that others can be a part of what God has prepared, so that we can be used for God's glory, and He can bless souls through us. Apologize, I've gone a little bit over.